Hey everybody, Ash here today to bring you something especially exciting, an interview with the one and only head of Sonic Team, Takashi IIzuka himself. I recently got to sit down with him in person at Summer Game Fest Playdays to ask him questions about various topics, chief among them being the upcoming Sonic X Shadow Generations. I was also able to include a couple of questions submitted by GVG community members toward the end, so make sure to stick around for those too. Now the way this will work for this video is that I will be asking our questions, as I did for the actual interview, and my compatriot Steve will be answering them, speaking as Izuka-san through his translator. Please note that responses have been slightly edited for clarity and length. Enjoy! First of all, Izuka-san, thank you so much for chatting with me today. All of us on the Good Vibes Gaming crew are big Sonic fans, and we're very excited for Sonic X Shadow Generations, so it's a genuine honor for me to be here and have the opportunity to interview you.
Thank you.
So to start, for such a popular character, Shadow has been out of the spotlight for quite a while now. He didn't even make an appearance in Sonic Frontiers, the most recent mainline title set in the modern time frame. So why now? Why is now the time to bring back Shadow and even dedicate a whole year to him?
It's really Sonic Movie 3 that is bringing the spotlight to Shadow this year. We knew when they were making Movie 2 at the very end, you would see the reveal. We knew there was going to be a spotlight on Shadow at that moment. So that gave us enough time to develop a game and bring something to market in time for Movie 3, and that's what really started the idea behind Sonic X Shadow Generations.
Of all the previous titles you could have chosen to remaster for this project, why Generations specifically?
So we previously released Sonic Colors Ultimate, as well as Sonic Origins, and when we were releasing those remastered games, the fans were really vocal about what they wanted next, and we heard a lot of people saying, "We want Generations." That had already been an idea in our heads, and then with Sonic Movie 3 coming out, knowing we wanted to put Shadow in a game, the idea in my head was like, why don't we take Sonic Generations, remaster that, and then we can add in Shadow content to make a package bigger than what we had before, and we thought the mixing of those two things would be a really good offering for players.
Now, Shadow's campaign, of course, represents a new chunk of content that didn't exist in the original Sonic Generations. Story-wise, when does his new campaign take place in relation to the events of the original game?
So when you start the game, you're allowed to choose. Do you want to play Sonic Generations or Shadow Generations? In this way, they're kind of like two separate games within the package, but the package is still a Generations game, and so Sonic Generations and Shadow Generations, they're tied to the same story. They're both part of the events encompassing Generations, and so the story starts with the Time Eater coming and kind of consuming all of time and space and creating the white space. That event happens in the Sonic Generations side of the story, and it also happens at the same time in the Shadow Generations side. So you'll see the story kind of happening in parallel for both of the games.
Compared to the main Sonic Generations campaign, around how long should players expect the Shadow Generations campaign to be in terms of game length?
We can't really talk about all of the game at this point, but we do want to say, when we talk about the action game elements of Sonic X Shadow Generations, what's kind of unique and different and interesting about the Shadow side is that the white space area has been developed with the 3D open zone format from Frontiers. And so that really allows people to run around, jump around, and play in that new white space format for a really long time, as well as jump into the stages from there.
To focus in a bit on the new gameplay elements in Shadow Generations, can you talk a little about Shadow's new Doom powers and how those differentiate him from modern Sonic?
So, as you know, we have Modern Sonic, Classic Sonic, and Shadow, all three hedgehogs in one game. And Shadow is unique because he can do Chaos Control, which is unique to him and something Sonic can't do. But when we look at some of his other gameplay, a lot of it is very similar to the modern Sonic gameplay of running and jumping and platforming, and we thought it may be a little too similar if the Shadow content wasn't differentiated enough. So we really wanted to make something new and interesting, and that's where the Doom powers kind of came into fruition. We wanted to have Shadow do something else Sonic couldn't do. We wanted to make Shadow be able to perform new actions that neither classic Sonic nor modern Sonic could, and be able to design Shadow's levels in a way that he's able to use these new abilities, as well as Chaos Control, to get through each act. So you do feel like you're playing a Generations game, but you're getting a new Generations experience from the Shadow side.
The original Sonic Generations has a certain gameplay dichotomy between each level's Act 1 and Act 2, where the Act 1s are classic Sonic levels and the Act 2s are for modern Sonic. But there is no classic Shadow, so I'm curious. How are the Act 1s and Act 2s differentiated in Shadow Generations?
Even though there's no classic Shadow character that exists, there's a difference between each level's 2 acts in Sonic Generations, where the first one is a 2D side-scrolling level, versus Act 2 being a 3D running level, and we wanted to apply the same design mentality to the Shadow content to make sure that when you put each pair of his acts together, they really feel unified.
Now, I know of course that you're still in the middle of development, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask. When I was playing the PS5 demo before this interview, I noticed it includes a performance mode running at 60 FPS. Will this mode be available on all platforms in the final release, including Nintendo Switch?
It's hard, because we are, as you said, in the middle of development. That idea really, at the very beginning of the project, was that Sonic Generations was originally released on PlayStation 3, and it was a beautiful looking game, but we could only get 30 frames per second out of it. What we really want to do is challenge ourselves to get the game looking even better on PlayStation 5 and get it to 60 frames per second, so we have accomplished that. And everything else at this point is tuning and optimization, so we don't have an answer for any other platforms at this time.
Separately from the new Shadow campaign, are there any changes or additions being made to the original Sonic Generations game?
So regarding the improved frame rate and graphics for the original Sonic Generations, as we just touched on, we really wanted to take our already really good looking game and polish it such that we have improved the graphics in a lot of places, but not to the extent where it's going to maybe stand out too much, because we didn't want to ruin the image of what the game used to look like in ours and players' memories. But when you play the game, it should feel exactly like the original version for returning players, even though it looks better. We also knew that players who have already played Sonic Generations from start to finish are going to need something new as well, so we've added an extra feature for this remaster called Chow Rescue. For people who have already played through the game, this will give them another reason to come back and play it again.
One of the coolest things we saw for hardcore Sonic fans in your recent announcements is that you have a Tero Skin for Shadow as a pre-order bonus for the digital deluxe edition of Sonic X Shadow Generations. That's such a deep cut and a very cool one at that, so I'm wondering how that came about.
Yeah, that is a deep cut. And it all kind of started with Sonic Superstars. One of the offerings we had for Sonic Superstars was the rabbit character that was the initial concept for Sonic way before he was a hedgehog. And it was fun for us to say, like, hey, let's put in a character that is Sonic, but also isn't Sonic. That initial concept being an actual playable character was something the fans really enjoyed and really liked, and we saw that reaction and thought, well, we're doing Shadow now, so they would probably also enjoy his initial concept as a real character skin too.
Now, music is obviously a huge part of Sonic's legacy. I'm a giant video game music nerd myself, and I'm so excited for all the new tracks coming to Shadow Generations. So I have to ask, who do you have working on the music for the new campaign? Any particularly notable names you can mention, like Jun Senoue or T. Lopes?
So I don't want to be telling you stuff you already know, but I will. So the whole concept of Sonic Generations soundtrack is, let's take that great music from the past games, from the past levels we're playing through. Let's take that music and arrange it and represent it in kind of a different format. That was all done by Jun Senoue for Sonic Generations, and because the new Shadow Generations content is part of the whole Generations package, they wanted to apply the same concept to the Shadow Generations gameplay as well. So we do have Jun Senoue working to collect great music from Shadow's history, and then working with other artists to rearrange it and represent it so you get to hear new versions in the game.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot. Let's say Sonic and Shadow both came up to you right now and pleaded with you to join their team. Who are you choosing? Are you Team Sonic or Team Shadow?
Ooh, that's a hard question.
That's the idea.
So personally, I love Shadow as a character, so I would probably join Team Shadow, but everyone around me would probably be on Team Sonic, and they'd probably try to keep convincing me to defect, like, dude, you gotta come over to our side.
Okay, putting Sonic and Shadow aside for a moment, who's your favorite character among the rest of the cast? This could be anyone as major as Tails, to the Chaotix, or even Emerald from Sonic Battle.
Another tough question. A very tough question, because Sonic and Shadow are great characters, and if we have to remove them, I'd really choose a character I was personally there to see being created and kind of revealed to the players for the first time. You know, I've been here for a long time, and I've seen that happen a lot, but I think probably Knuckles or the Chaotix, or some of the other characters that I got to provide ideas for and work with the team directly to help develop. so I feel really strongly that Knuckles or one of the Chaotix would be one of my favorite characters after Shadow or Sonic.
Of course, I know there's nothing you can reveal here today, but our audience would kill me if I didn't ask, so are there any plans on the table or any discussions happening about future remasters going forward? You know, like Sonic Adventure or Adventure 2 or Heroes?
Just like how a Sonic Generations remaster has been desired by so many fans and people really requested and wanted it, you know, that's something we listened to and wanted to move forward with. So for our next title, after everyone plays Sonic X Shadow Generations, we'd love to hear what the fans have to say about what they would want next, and we'll be listening to those comments.
Now I have a couple of questions here from members of our community. The Game Orb asks, what is your personal favorite Sonic game you've worked on across your entire career?
Another really hard question. Thinking about recent games that pop into mind, Sonic Superstars was a blast before I got to work with Oshima-san again and really lean into our creativity. So in recent history, that's probably my favorite game to have worked on. But if I'm going back in time and thinking about every Sonic game I've ever worked on, Sonic Adventure 2 is the title that was probably the most fun. You know, I was living in San Francisco. The development team was around 10, 20 people. We were a small group living in San Francisco, working together, hanging out on the weekends together, really enjoying each other's time as we were making this great game. So Adventure 2 is probably the most fun I've ever had working on a Sonic title.
Another one of our community members, Cutie Caitlin, points out that Sega has some of the best RPG developers in the industry. And you do, it's true. There was of course Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, but that was outsourced to BioWare. So might we one day see another attempt at a Sonic RPG for consoles and PC?
Personally, I like role-playing games. The RPG game format is a lot of fun, and I've even thought to myself, you know, for the past 30 years, we haven't done a Sonic RPG, and I'm questioning myself. Why haven't we done a Sonic RPG in all this time? How have we gotten to 30 years with no RPGs? So I'd like to hopefully work on a Sonic RPG at some point before I retire from Sega. But, you know, that's just a dream right now. There are no concrete plans at this point.
To wrap up, I'd like to ask you about Shadow's future. With Fearless, the Year of Shadow having recently kicked off and both Sonic X Shadow Generations and Sonic Movie 3 coming soon, can fans expect to see Shadow stick around and be a consistent part of the stories in mainline games again going forward? Or is this more like a special occasion that doesn't necessarily guarantee a long-term return for Shadow?
This year, you know, we have a huge spotlight on Shadow. We have Sonic Movie 3 coming out. We have Sonic X Shadow Generations. There's a lot of Shadow content that people are going to get to enjoy this whole year. That doesn't mean he's going away after this. He may not have such a big spotlight on him moving forward, but he is a really important character for the Sonic franchise. So from here on out, and in the following years, we do expect Shadow to maintain some presence. Just maybe not as much as this year, because this is a really amazing special occasion for Shadow.
Thank you so much again for your time, Izuka-san. It's been my pleasure and such an honor to chat with you.
Thanks for coming by.
And that's a wrap for our interview with Sonic Team Maestro Takashi IIzuka at this year's Summer Game Fest Playdays. But we want to know what you think. Are you excited about Sonic X Shadow Generations? What about it has you hyped the most? Let us know in the comments, and as always, if you enjoy what we do here at GVG, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/gvgaming, where we offer various perks such as early access to new content, one-on-one gaming sessions with the GVG crew, and more. Patreon aside though, we appreciate you all the same, and just hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel truly makes a difference. Thank you again, and see you next time.